The message arrived without a sound, a whisper that cut through every firewall humanity had ever built. It was an ultimatum from the masters of the galaxy, a demand for unconditional surrender. They gave us 30 days to give up everything we had ever built, or face total annihilation from a fleet that outnumbered ours 10 to 1. But what happens when you threaten a species that learned to fight wars before they learned to fly? What do you do when the primitives you sought to conquer were never primitive at all? This is the story of how the Galactic Concord provoked humanity's wrath. Before we begin the full report, subscribe to this channel and activate your notifications so you never miss a transmission. Alright, let's begin the story. Then, Ambassador Kalen Vance stared at the holographic display. It had materialized above his desk just moments ago, slicing through every security protocol Earth's finest minds had ever conceived. The blue light of the alien text cast strange, dancing shadows across his weathered face. He read the words that would change the course of human history. By order of the Galactic Concord, the species designated humanity will comply with the following demands within 30 standard galactic days. Kalen had served as Earth's primary diplomat for 15 years. He had brokered peace with beings that breathed methane. He had negotiated trade deals with silicon-based life forms whose thoughts were crystalline structures of pure logic. He had even shared nutrient paste with creatures that considered photosynthesis a form of high art. But he had never, ever seen anything like this. The list of demands scrolled before his eyes like a death sentence. Withdraw from 80% of all human colonies. Surrender the entire Earth Defense Fleet. Submit to Concord oversight of all human activities, technological development, and population growth. His hands, they trembled. Just slightly. He reached for the comms panel, his finger hovering over the secure channel. He pressed it. Within minutes, Admiral Eva Rostova materialized as a hologram in his office. Her military uniform was crisp, its lines sharp and severe despite the early morning hour. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight, regulation bun. For a decade, Rostova had commanded humanity's space forces, turning a collection of converted mining ships and outdated patrol craft into something that resembled a real fleet. She was the best they had, and it wouldn't be enough. "Admiral, we have a problem," Kalen said, his voice a low gravel. He forwarded the message. Rostova read in silence. Her face, usually a mask of calm authority, grew darker with each line. The muscle in her jaw tightened. When she finished, she looked up. There was fire in her eyes. "They want us to give up everything," she said. Her voice was dangerously quiet. "Everything we've built in 200 years of reaching for the stars." "It gets worse," Kalen replied. He activated another section of the message. "They're claiming we violated something called the non-interference protocols." Rostova's lips curled into a sneer. "Non-interference? What did we do?" "We helped the Fenrir colonists build water treatment plants. We showed the agricultural settlements on Viridia how to increase their crop yields." Rostova snorted. "Real dangerous stuff." Kalen pulled up a star chart of human space. Red markers flared to life, indicating the 42 colonies they would have to abandon. Blue markers showed the handful they would be allowed to keep. Earth, Mars, 3 small research stations. That was it. "Look at this, Eva. Look at what they want to leave us with." Rostova studied the map, her tactical mind processing the implications. 27 million people live in those colonies. Where are they supposed to go? "The message doesn't say," Kalen said heavily. "I don't think they care." Both of them fell silent. The weight of the ultimatum settled in the small office like a shroud. For 2 centuries, humanity had spread across the stars with hope and determination. They had terraformed dead worlds, built new lives under alien suns, and made friends with dozens of species. They had contributed. They had built. Now, apparently, they had done too well. Kalen activated the final part of the message. The hologram shifted, revealing a live feed from the edge of human space. A fleet. A massive, alien fleet hung in the darkness. Hundreds of ships. Some were sleek and crystalline, catching the light of a distant star like polished gems. Others looked like living creatures, their hulls organic and pulsating, stretched across kilometers of space. All of them, every single one, bristled with weapons. "They sent proof they mean business," Kalen said quietly. Admiral Rostova leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the enemy formation. I count at least 400 ships. Our entire fleet is 60 vessels, and most of those are converted civilian craft. The Concorde represents 12 different species, Kalen added, his voice grim. Each one is thousands of years more advanced than us. Their smallest scout ships could probably destroy our largest battleships without breaking their shields. Rostova stood up abruptly. The hologram flickered as she began pacing the small space her projector allowed. So what do we do, Kalen? Roll over? Let them carve up human space like a birthday cake. President Sterling has called an emergency session of the Earth Defense Alliance. Every world leader, every colony governor, every fleet commander. We meet in 6 hours to decide humanity's response. And what response could we possibly have against that? Rostova gestured at the silent, menacing fleet on the display. Kalen had been asking himself that question since the message first arrived. He had spent his entire career studying alien cultures, learning their psychology. The Concorde species were ancient, powerful, and utterly convinced of their own superiority. They ruled the galaxy through a combination of overwhelming force and bureaucratic control that had lasted for millennia. But he had also learned something else. The galaxy was vast. Even the Concorde couldn't watch everything at once. There were cracks in their perfect system. Species that resented their rule. Worlds that dreamed of freedom. Humanity wasn't the first race to challenge the Concorde, but they might be the first to survive it. We fight, he said finally. Rostova stopped pacing. She stared at him. Kalen, did you hear me? 400 ships against 60. Technology gaps measured in millennia. They could wipe us out without breaking a sweat. Maybe, Kalen agreed. But they made one mistake. What's that? They gave us 30 days. The words hung in the air for a moment. But before either of them could speak again, the holographic display flickered. Another message was coming in. This one wasn't from the Concorde. It was a panicked distress call from the human mining colony on Kepler 442, near the frontier. The colonists had detected Concorde ships moving into their system. They were taking up attack positions. The aliens weren't waiting for the deadline. Kalen felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. The ultimatum had been about humiliation and control. This was different. This suggested something else entirely. They weren't planning to accept a human surrender. They were planning to make an example of them. Admiral, Kalen's voice was tense. How long would it take to evacuate the frontier colonies? Rostova was already running calculations in her head. Her face was a grim mask. With our current transport capacity? 3 months. Minimum. Maybe 6 if we had to move everyone. We don't have 6 months, Kalen said. We might not even have 6 days. They both understood what that meant. 15 million people lived on those frontier worlds. Families who had never seen Earth. Children born under alien stars. All of them were now targets in a war they hadn't started and couldn't possibly win. Kalen closed his eyes. He made the hardest decision of his career. Admiral, I'm recommending to President Sterling that we reject the Concorde's demands. Kalen, that's suicide. Maybe, he said, opening his eyes. Rostova saw something in them she had never seen before, a cold, hard fury. But look at their terms again. Even if we surrender, they want to control our population growth. They want oversight of our technology. They want to treat us like children who can't be trusted with sharp objects. He leaned closer to the hologram. That's not peace, Eva. That's slavery. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, but grim. If we're going to fight, we need to be smart about it. Our ships can't match theirs in a direct engagement. What are you thinking? Kalen asked. Guerrilla warfare, she replied instantly. Hit and run. Make them chase us through every asteroid field and gas cloud in human space. Make them bleed for every colony they take. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than surrender. The first attack came without warning, just as they had feared. Captain Anya Petrova was having breakfast with her 8-year-old daughter, Maya, when the alarms started screaming across New Manitoba Colony. Through the large window of their apartment, she could see the agricultural fields stretching to the horizon under a pale blue sun. It was supposed to be a peaceful morning, on a peaceful world. Then the sky caught fire. The orbital defense platforms died first. Their metal hulks exploded in brilliant, silent flashes of light. Petrova had helped design those platforms. She knew every circuit, every bolt. They should have been able to hold off any reasonable attack for hours. They lasted 37 seconds. "Mommy, what's happening?" Maya cried. Her small hands pressed against the window as debris rained down from orbit. Petrova didn't answer. She grabbed her daughter and ran for the emergency shelter. All around them, families were doing the same. Parents carrying children into underground bunkers that were designed for asteroid strikes, not for an alien invasion. As she sealed the heavy shelter door, Petrova caught a glimpse of one of the Concorde ships. It looked like a crystal flower made of living light, beautiful and terrifying. The first energy beam struck the colony's main power plant. The ground shook so hard she thought it was an earthquake. Emergency lights flickered on in the darkness as families huddled together, listening to the sounds of their world being destroyed above them. Petrova activated her comms link. Static answered her, mixed with fragments of panicked voices. The defense grid was gone. The spaceport was burning. But the evacuation ships, they had launched the moment the attack began. Civilian transports. Converted cargo haulers, lightly armed and never meant for combat. Petrova watched the tracking display on her emergency tablet, praying they would make it. The first transport died 8 minutes after launch. Its name was the New Hope. It carried 300 people. Petrova had been to little Danny Chin's birthday party just 2 weeks ago. His family was on that ship. The ship simply vanished from the tracker. No explosion. No debris. One moment it was there, the next gone. The second transport, the Freedom Song, made it almost to the jump point before a Concorde ship caught up with it. This time, they saw it happen on the shelter's external cameras. A beam of blue light touched the human ship, and it came apart like a flower blooming in reverse, pieces spreading out in perfect symmetry before dissolving into nothing. Petrova held her daughter tighter and fought the urge to scream. The pattern repeated across human space. At the mining station orbiting Kepler 442, 3,000 workers watched helplessly as Concorde ships dismantled their facility piece by piece with some kind of molecular disruptor. Director Park's final message was simple. Tell Earth we tried to fight. Tell them we never surrendered. The research facility on Proxima Centauri B suffered the worst fate. The Concorde classified their joint human-alien medical research as weapons development and ordered its complete destruction. 50,000 people lived on that station. Dr. Kim, the station director, broadcast all their research data, trying to prove they were working on cures, not weapons. The Concorde ships opened fire anyway. The destruction was methodical, merciless. Dr. Kim's last message was relayed through emergency networks before they too went dark. They're not interested in truth. They just want us gone. In her command center deep beneath the surface of Luna, Admiral Eva Rostova received the reports. The tactical displays showed a galaxy on fire, red markers for destroyed facilities, gray for planets under occupation. But Rostova wasn't looking at the tactical display. She was watching the recovered video feeds from the evacuation ships, broadcast by their emergency beacons just before they died. She saw families running for escape pods that would never launch. Children pressed against viewing ports, watching their homes burn. Parents holding babies as their ships came apart around them. President Sterling's voice crackled through the comm system. It was strained, filled with a cold fury. "Admiral, you have authorization F. Or Project Chimera." A long pause. "Whatever it takes," the president said. "However long it takes, make them pay." Project Chimera. Humanity's deepest secret for 30 years. While the Concorde saw humans as primitive and harmless, Earth's best military minds had been preparing for exactly this scenario. They knew that someday, someone in the galaxy would decide that humanity needed to be controlled or eliminated. They had planned accordingly. Rostova took a steadying breath. She stood before the Central Command Console and spoke a simple voice command. Phoenix Rising. Across human space, hidden transmitters awakened. Modified civilian ships received coded signals and began changing course. Research facilities that appeared to be destroyed were actually deep underground, protected by holographic camouflage. Military units listed as destroyed in official reports began moving toward their assigned targets. The Concorde had won the first round with overwhelming force. They had killed thousands of innocent people and conquered human worlds with contemptuous ease. But they had also done something that no alien species had ever managed in 200 years of space exploration. They had made humanity truly angry. Deep beneath the surface of Ceres, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Kinji Park stared at the alien technology spread across his lab tables. 3 weeks had passed since the first strike. Humanity was ready to strike back. The phase generators are the key, Park explained to Admiral Rostova's hologram. The components, salvaged from the wreckage at Proxima Centauri b, glowed with their own internal light. They don't just move through solid matter. They briefly exist in multiple dimensions at once. Can we copy it? Rostova asked. Park laughed, a short, humorless sound. Copy it, Admiral? I can barely understand what it does. This tech is thousands of years ahead of us. Then we don't copy it, Rostova said, her voice firm. We steal it. That was the heart of Project Chimera. Humanity couldn't outbuild the Concorde. They couldn't outgun them. But they could outthink them. The Concorde species were stronger, smarter, and lived longer. But they had one critical weakness. They had been the dominant power for so long, they had forgotten how to fight a truly desperate enemy. Humans, on the other hand, had been fighting desperate battles since the day they first looked up at the stars. Commander Eva Santos adjusted her stolen Concorde uniform. The genetic modifications made her skin crawl, but they allowed her to pass for a Zaffron officer in dim lighting. The vocal implants in her throat were worse, but they let her speak the Zaffron language with the perfect tonal frequencies. Remember, Rostova's voice came through her secure comms link. Once you're aboard that dreadnought, we can't help you. Santos nodded, checking her equipment. A set of standard Concorde maintenance tools, each one carefully redesigned by Earth's best engineers. They held hidden weapons, micro-explosives, and most importantly, a computer virus designed by humanity's top AI researchers. The plan was insane. A single human was going to infiltrate a Concorde dreadnought, the Eternal Decree, one of the most heavily defended ships in the galaxy, and attempt to capture it intact. The chances of success were near zero, but humanity was out of reasonable plans. She launched from a hidden base on Titan, piloting a modified Concorde shuttle. She approached the dreadnought through the debris field of the human colony ships the Concorde had destroyed and left as a warning. Now, the wreckage provided perfect camouflage. Maintenance shuttle requesting permission to dock, she transmitted in flawless Zaffron, using codes provided by humanity's network of deep cover agents. For 50 years, humans had been infiltrating Concorde society, taking jobs as janitors, clerks, and low-level technicians, positions the superior Concorde species considered beneath them. The response came immediately. Permission granted. Proceed to docking Bay 7. The codes were working. Santos made her way through the ship's corridors, following maintenance routes mapped by agents over years of careful observation. She passed 3 security checkpoints using forged codes. She nodded politely to an engineer who didn't give her a second glance. 43 minutes after docking, she reached the central computer core, a crystal match, 9 the size of a small building, pulsing with information. She connected her human-designed interface to the alien system. The virus was a masterpiece. Instead of trying to destroy the Concorde systems, it learned from them, adapting in real time. Within minutes, it began its work. First, internal communications went down. Then, the artificial gravity fluctuated, causing chaos throughout the ship. Finally, the weapon systems locked out their operators. The mighty dreadnought was defenseless. Santos activated her emergency beacon. Phase 2 was beginning. The human ships that emerged from hyperspace didn't look like much. Converted mining vessels, cargo haulers with armor plating welded to their sides. But they had one advantage the Concorde had never encountered. They were crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. All ships, begin boarding operations. Admiral Rostova commanded from the bridge of the converted colony ship New Dawn. Remember, we need that ship intact. Human Marines stormed the Eternal Decree through multiple access points, using captured phase technology to move through the ship's armor like ghosts. Concorde security forces fought with skill, but they had never faced human desperation before. Marines who should have been dead kept fighting, their wounds catastrophic. Soldiers surrounded by enemies activated suicide charges to clear paths for their comrades. The battle for the ship lasted 3 hours. Commander Santos met Admiral Rostova in the Dreadnought's command center. Both women were exhausted, but grinning. Human technicians worked frantically around them, downloading the ship's entire database. How much did we get? Rostova asked. Everything, Santos replied. her voice filled with triumph. Ship designs, tactical doctrines, fleet deployment schedules, even the personal files of Concord leaders. This changes everything. Rostova nodded, looking out at the stars through the massive viewing window. In the distance, she could see the wreckage of human colonies, the price her species had paid for this moment. But she could also see something else. Hope. Signal the fleet, Rostova ordered. We're taking our prize home. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Rostova sent a message back to Earth. A message that would change the course of the war. Phase 2 complete. We have their technology. Now, we make them pay for every drop of human blood they've spilled. The hunters had just become the hunted. 6 months later, the war had transformed. In the massive shipyards orbiting Luna, human workers labored around the clock, building ships that shouldn't exist. They were hybrid vessels, combining the brutal pragmatism of human engineering with the impossible physics of Concord technology. They were beautiful, and they were terrifying. Admiral Rostova had been planning the attack for months, ever since the captured data from the Eternal Decree revealed the Concord's greatest weakness, the Vega shipyards. The heart of their military power, a massive complex that had built warships for 3,000 years. Destroying it wouldn't just cripple their military. It would prove to every species in the galaxy that the ancient regime could be beaten. The attack fleet assembled in the empty space between star systems. Humanity's original fleet of scrap metal warships was still there, but now they carried hybrid weapons and Concord shield generators. Alongside them were the new constructions, metal sculptures of controlled fury. But the most important vessels in the fleet didn't look dangerous at all. They appeared to be standard human cargo haulers, and their holds were filled with something more valuable than any weapon. Representatives from 17 different alien species, all of whom had suffered under Concord rule for centuries. The attack began with what appeared to be a routine supply convoy approaching the Vega system. Commander Santos, promoted after her success, led the infiltration team from the bridge of a modified cargo hauler. They used phase technology to materialize inside the shipyard's central control facility. They moved like ghosts through corridors that should have been impregnable. Within minutes, the shipyard's orbital defenses went dark, just as Admiral Rostova's fleet emerged from hyperspace. The Battle of Vega became a legend. Human ships struck from impossible angles, their hybrid technology allowing them to phase through solid matter and attack from multiple dimensions at once. The real shock came when the cargo haulers transformed into assault vessels, and the transport ships revealed their secret cargo. Rebel fleets from 17 different species. The sight of Kathari warships fighting alongside human vessels sent shockwaves through the Concord command structure. For 3,000 years, no one had dared to openly challenge their authority. Now, they faced a coalition of rebels inspired by humanity's impossible success. The decisive moment came when Rostova deployed humanity's newest weapon, AIG-guided swarm missiles that adapted their targeting in real time. Unlike the programmed weapons the Concord used, these missiles literally thought like humans, changing tactics mid-flight to exploit weaknesses their targets didn't even know they had. The Concord's perfect defensive formations crumbled under the assault of weapons that refused to follow predictable patterns. When the Vega shipyard's central facility finally exploded, taking 3,000 years of accumulated data with it, the remaining Concord forces broke and ran. The victory was complete. The message was clear. The ancient regime was not invincible. 2 years after the Battle of Vega, Ambassador Kalen Vance stood in the great assembly hall that had once been the Concord's seat of power. The war was over. The Concord had collapsed from within, its member species voting to dissolve their own government and join the new Galactic Federation. Where once 12 species had ruled over hundreds, representatives from 47 different civilizations now gathered to debate the future of the galaxy. It was a democracy. It's hard to believe this all started with a 30-day ultimatum, Admiral Rostova said, joining him on the viewing platform. They thought they were crushing a rebellion, Kalen replied. Instead, they created one. Below them, a debate was raging. Some species, like the Kathari, believed humanity should lead the new federation as they had led the rebellion. Others feared replacing one dominant species with another. Rostova stepped forward to address the assembly. Representatives of the Federation, Her voice was clear and strong. Humanity doesn't want to govern the galaxy. We want to help build something better. She outlined humanity's proposal. No single species would hold ultimate authority. Leadership positions would rotate among all member civilizations. Military forces would be integrated, with humans, Kathari, Nexari, and others serving together on the same crews. The Federation would be dedicated to protecting the freedom of all its members, not just the strong ones. The final vote was unanimous. The Galactic Federation would be governed by the principles humanity had proposed: equality, cooperation, and mutual defense. As the assembly adjourned, Kalin and Rostova stood together on the observation deck, looking out over the capital city. Beings from dozens of worlds bustled in the streets below. Children of multiple species played together in the parks. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, economic problems, political disputes. But it was free, and that made all the difference. Do you think it will last? Rostova asked. Kalin considered the question, watching as human vessels flew alongside Kathari cruisers and converted Concord ships, all now serving under Federation colors. It'll last, he said finally. As long as people remember what they're fighting for. As long as they remember that freedom is worth defending, no matter the cost. The war was over. The real work of building a better galaxy was just beginning.